We're so glad you're here tonight. As I said, this is part of our featured artist exhibition. This is an annual exhibition that we do, and it's tied to Not So Silent Night, which is our fundraiser. So everybody has an invitation on their seat, and I want to personally invite you to come back out in just a little less than a month from now on December 7th. These artist talks are kind of the introduction of and the opening of the gallery show, but Not So Silent Night is the closing of the show. And each year we select a group of artists to show in the featured artist exhibition, and half of the proceeds from the art sales go back towards Reach. So it's also part of our fundraiser. And you'll see on the invitation there's a QR code, and that will bring you to the website to purchase tickets. But also if you see a piece of art that you would like to purchase this evening, you can also do so through that website. So I'd like to start out by doing a brief introduction of our three artists and read kind of a snippet of their artist bios. And then I have some prepared questions that the artists received, but it's hopefully a conversation, and I think we're a friendly group. So if you have questions along the way, shout them out from the audience, but we'll also have some time for questions at the end. So next, meet Steph Joy Hogan. She is an award-winning mixed media painter from Lansing, Michigan, and she revels in bold color statements, unknown worlds, and the absurd and delightful all around us. And I think that's a wonderful description of your artwork. Inspired by the unbridled imaginations of children and working primarily with acrylic paint, ink, and scraps of found paper ephemera, Steph intuitively creates layered landscapes, imaginary universes, and the whimsical creatures that inhabit them. Steph was voted top artist in the 2021 Lansing City Pulse Top of the Town contest, and she has been up there a number of years. And her recognizably vibrant and whimsical artwork has been showcased in galleries and exhibitions across mid-Michigan. Her work has been featured on a CATA bus, a bus stop shelter, and 2 billboards, and her commissioned mixed media paintings can be found permanently installed in Impressions 5, Fenner Nature Center, and the headquarters of the Davies Project. So thank you for coming. Kayla Turpin, who is also, I'd like to note, a current Reach teaching artist. She's teaching our photography class. She writes that her journey with a camera began at the age of 7 when a pink Barbie film camera sparked her fascination. Through high school, Kayla crafted visual stories capturing the warmth of extended family gatherings and the camaraderie of friends during hangouts. Editing these moments on platforms like PicMonkey became a creative outlet, laying the foundation for her love affair with the visual narrative. The turning point in Kayla's photographic evolution came during a transformative 5-month adventure living abroad in South Africa. Immersed in diverse cultures and landscapes, her passion for photography blossomed. Kayla's creative journey is an exploration of the timeless allure of nostalgia and the exquisite pleasures found in life's simple luxuries. From the calming lagoon blue waters to the grounding sensation of walking barefoot on freshly cut green grass, nature's beauty is her constant muse. Journals filled with ink pen thoughts, the romantic artistry of love letters, and the captivating world of fashion magazines all contribute to the rich tapestry of her inspiration. And we have Kayla's some of her nature photography, but she's also a prolific and amazing portrait and wedding photographer as well. So, and lastly, Emilio, who is an alumni of some Reach programming. He is a Michigan-based artist focused primarily on oil painting. His images are an exploration of space and surface through color and texture, the subjects of which are derived from his photography. Emilio has been working seriously towards art for about 4 years, though he has been working on developing his craft most of his life, taking classes as early as 10 and drawing for as long as he can remember. Emilio's goals with his imagery is to inspire contemplation in the viewer and celebrate visual stimulus, simultaneously ignoring and exalting the figurative context of his subjects throughout the process of making. He hopes to bridge the gap between the raw expression of shaped color and the concrete reality of form and figure to create works that are, on all levels, touched by the mystery of conscious attention. So welcome, Amelia and Kayla, as well. So I'll start the same way I started at our artist talk last week. Our artists last week had a lot of similarities in their work, and you guys are kind of marked by your dissimilarities. So I'd love for each of you to go through and talk to us a little bit about your artistic process. What does it look like from start to finish when you're approaching a new work of art?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go first. So my artwork is mixed media artwork. It's the very outer space, bright, colorful pieces right when you walked in the gallery. So when I'm creating those, I don't start with any, I know generally what they'll look like because it's a series that I've been doing for several years, and they're all unique but have some similarities. But I don't start with any specific composition or colors or subject matter in mind. And I specifically love that collection because it's, no matter what my creative energy level is any given day, it's something that I can do a step in. You know, some days the muse just isn't there and you aren't ready to, you know, create a character or do something very detailed, but I can always take blank pieces of paper and pour acrylic inks on them and smear them around and make beautiful watercolory looking papers that then become my backgrounds and my planets. That takes not a lot of creativity. It just, you gotta just do the thing and play a little bit. So some days it's that, some days it's tearing out papers from magazines or maps or book pages and creating the grounds, and then sometimes it's just gluing bits that you've already found into their places. And then the last step is probably like, you know, where they really come to life, where you have that charged creative day where my whole backgrounds are glued in, and then it's drawing in little rockets and little aliens in spaceships on their way to work, or you know, space plans, or you know, the constellations. I very rarely do real constellations that I know of. I create these constellations. This is an unknown universe, not necessarily ours. So I love them because I just realized that some days you just don't feel like sitting down and creating art. But with this process I've created, no matter what mood I'm in, there's something I can do to make forward progress in my stories.
What about you, Kayla?
My art is a reflection of my ADD. I was walking in a garden. And well, I'm an analog and digital photographer. Are any of you familiar with analog photography?
No, tell us all about it.
It's film photography, so that has to be developed in the lab. It's not something that's fast-paced like digital photography is. The art that's hanging on the wall here, I was at the MSU Gardens, and I just was going for a walk because I am inspired by nature. It's how I rest and reset. When I work with people, which I love doing, it's still a lot of energies for me, and I get drained. So I love nature, whether it's in the woods, if I'm in the countryside, and in a garden. And I just happened to be in a garden one day, and I decided to take my Pentax 645 pen, that is an autofocus analog camera, and I was taking photos of all the flowers that I thought were beautiful. But I love tie-dye, and so I slowed my camera down a lot, and I took a lot of movement photos. Like, thankfully I was there alone. Because I was circling around, and someone would have had concerns. But it turned out beautiful to me after I got it developed, which is always like opening a gift on Christmas Day, because you don't know how it's really going to turn out. And even some of them, there's a couple of them where I was like, that wasn't my intention, but it was gorgeous, so I just threw it in there. Yeah, I think when I started in photography, I wanted to photograph people, and now that I feel like I'm matured, I've taken my camera and taken it to places outside of what's expected of me, being a wedding photographer. So that's really helped me actually set my craft apart than doing just what's expected, I guess. There's a photographer that I'm inspired by. His name's Daniel Kim, and he said, the moment that you can define your art is when you're doing the things that bring you joy and not just doing it for other people. And I really saw a difference in my art when I started just going out and photographing for pleasure and doing the things that I love.
We've gone on some really amazing trips with one of our content teams. And I just love your freedom. Like, you inspire. And when I see you on these amazing vacations, I'm like, yep, I wanna vacation with Kayla and Taylor. It's just you have fun. Like she is a free spirit, and you know, I'm an older version of you, and I like this.
Well, me personally, I couldn't help but notice, despite the obvious differences in our presentation, there was I can't help but find the connections like into my own work, even though we make such different things. And like, for example, my work always starts with photography, and your motion-based photography, just how much like things blur, or like when I find aberrations or just imperfections in photography, I find that so exciting, and I'm always zeroing in on just the things that stick out to me like that you wouldn't normally focus on for a piece of I guess straightforward like photography or just a one subject image. And then as far as collage goes, like I feel that at least in a similar spirit, I feel very connected to like accumulation of things over time. I'm really interested in watching how like I'll have the photo will stay constant, but I will return to these pieces over sometimes months and months, like coming back to them. I need to completely forget what they look like so that I can come back and say, that's obviously what's wrong with it. I need to fix that immediately. So like, and also just like my thoughts around it and the way time passes, like you come back to it with something different each time. And by the time you have something finished, it's been through multiple periods of life.
Well, I think particularly in Steph and Kayla's work, you see it feels like an ongoing series a little bit. And I'm curious, as you're approaching work, how do you keep it fresh? Are there specific challenges when you're kind of sitting down to do kind of the process you've developed that really make it exciting for you, like either within your medium or just like exploring like one of the worlds? Like what is it that like gets you like, okay, I need to like start up something next? So I'll start with Emilio this time.
Yeah, for me, I feel like when obviously forms get more complex, it takes a lot longer for those things to kind of develop and take shape and to look like whatever they are. But I don't know, I find an excitement in all the different stages. When I go at a piece for the first time, I almost go at it as though like I'm looking to take it to be kind of finished the first time, but I'm doing that repeatedly over and over again and saying like, if I kind of ignore what I've done so far and like I'm gonna project something new over it, how am I gonna approach that a new time? And obviously the layers of paint, they build up thick and the textures change, and it continues to be an evolving thing as you keep messing with it. And it's never the same way twice. And that's what I try to stick to, is try to keep it with a fresh mind every time, something new.
Yeah. So when you're doing your process, Emilio, do you start with a sketch on the canvas? Do you kind of let it develop as you're going? Walk us through what it looks like when you're staring at the canvas first.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of, my basis originally in artwork was sketching, usually in pencil or black and white. I've transitioned to, for my own practice, I'll do a lot of ink things. I try to get things in one go. Just pull up usually a reference from the internet and say, like, maybe I'm practicing portraits, maybe I'm practicing cityscapes or something, and I'll just try to get it in one go. And then when I'm painting, obviously color is introduced, but I'm still kind of going at it from a place of simplicity, where I'll just say, like, what color is taking up the most of this composition, and let's lay that out first in a general shape. It's never going to be exact, and I'm not measuring things out. If I do sketch something out, it'll be very light, or I'm very intentional about trying to maybe get a specific portrait or something very locked in. But for for my own work that I'm most excited about, most of the time it's not very sketched out. And it's just very like one layer of color over the next.
So Kayla, so getting back to like what makes photography fresh for you?
Yeah, and like I said, doing the things that bring me joy and not just doing something as a business transaction, because it is a business for me too. I shoot a lot for pleasure. I never really put that work out there. You know, I think social media can put a damper on art and has. And I've just never showed that. And then I started doing that, and it refreshed me to share like the things that also bring me joy and not just take photos for people that bring them joy. And that's really just what refreshes me. It sounds selfish, but I think when you're working with other humans, you also have to make sure your cup is filled up. If I was a painter, I've like tried to dabble in that, and it just never really worked out for me, because there is, you know, a process for everything that you do that is a part of art, and that's something that I'm learning too. Like, it can't be a free-for-all, and that's so beautiful. But if I was a painter, it would be abstract. And so like the photos that I do take for pleasure, I do like to make it look like an abstract painting, and there is a process to that. So I learned that. Like, I would watch YouTube videos, I bought some photography books. Those also refresh me just to stay inspired. But I also follow painters who do a lot of abstract work. So that also encourages me and refreshes me to look at other artwork that I'm also inspired by that's outside of photography.
How about you, Steph? Especially working long term in a series like you have.
I think I started this particular series in 2019 maybe, and make 50 of them a year. Like, I make a lot. It's a prolific series. But I think the nature of because of the materials I use a lot of found papers, maps and book pages, sheet music, things I referred to earlier, and those materials are always different, and I only have so much of them, so I may have like I have a current favorite book I'm working out of, but eventually I won't have that book anymore, and so it's always, you know, and every page is a little different, so the materials inspire me. I feel like my colors and the vibrancy of my colors are very recognizable to people, but they're also like, if you look at each individual artwork, they're all very different color palettes, so putting together different color palettes. And I would say the majority of the work that I do is actually in this series that is out here, but I give myself creative breaks doing something very different. So when I come back to this, it's always fresh. So these pieces are always quite small. The largest pieces in this series are 12 inches by 12 inches. So that's quite small as far as artwork goes. And I'm often nose to the canvas drawing in details. Like, it's very small, detailed work. So once every year or two, I also do, like, one example, I have a couple artwork styles I do, but some people are also familiar with big lion paintings that I do. Sarah knows them. They're like 3 feet by 4 feet, and they're all just acrylic paint, and it's mostly finger painting, and it's a very like kinetic. It's a creative stretch because it's a different medium. It's a different subject matter, but also just physically, like it's big instead of small, and it's much less controlled. And so even just giving myself a completely different creative outlet that has nothing to do with the rest of my body of work. Then when I come back to this collection, it feels fresh because I just did something so different physically with my creativity that it just keeps my brain inspired.
And the cool thing about one of her lines, I don't remember what year it was, she actually invited us as a community to like paint on it and then had a sign on the back. And I think as a like artist wannabe, but also as a J Hogan, as I love the J Hogans. It's inspiring, and I love everything you're doing here. You're doing a great job, Melissa. Thanks. she's our new director, and this is just great. Thank you so much for having this. But yeah, I mean, Stephanie and Dan, they're like, we're in the studio, come on out and hang out with us. And I just think as a community, we're so artistically drawn, and to be invited into your space. Not a lot of art. I don't know how many artists really do that, and then to say, throw some paint on my canvas. Like, you know, it's just communal, and it's cool.
Cool. Well, I did want to ask you, do you see your pieces as illustrating like a specific world that you're always, like in your head, do you think I need to now explore this part of the world, or does it feel unrelated to each other?
they do feel unrelated to each other in the sense that like the world is, so if you think of the universe and our galaxy is just a small part of a million other galaxies that are unrelated to each other, but also like I believe they live in the same universe, but maybe not in the same solar system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and actually, I one of a very frequent question I get about my artwork is just, people comment that, oh, you should illustrate children's books. Like your artwork would be great for children's books. And that is what this, you're hearing it here first. One of my like brainchilds for a potential book, because I don't think I could do the same world for 28 pages or the same character doing like I just don't. That's not. They're similar, but they are different. I just don't think I could have like the repetition to make a cohesive story about one world or one character. But I'm really inspired because this is some of the paper materials that I use in my artwork are like old vintage antique books that are just falling apart that have great illustrations in them and great text, and like a classic field guide that has, maybe like a sketch of a plant that they found in some land, and it's like, figure one is this plant that we found, and then this may be an animal that we saw, and so I can imagine a world where I do, each page is a different world, and they are unique, but it's like, this is planet X47 that I visited, and this is a creature that I saw there, and this is an entirely different planet, and if the creatures look different, it's okay, because it's a different world. So that will roll around in my brain for like 10 years, but when you see it,
we're like, we're not around in November, right? 2024.
So, Kayla, I'll ask the next one of you. When I was thinking about like what are the similarities and differences in your work, I think, and I should say we lined up the artist talks really based on people's availability, not like intentionally putting certain people together. And I felt like last week the pieces all kind of were landscape based, so there was a very strong dialogue between them. And I feel like your three pieces are like the vibrancy in the show, a lot of color. And I feel like what's so fascinating is you all have a lot of vibrancy in your work, but in very different ways and in like different mediums. So I guess I would love for you to talk about like how you approach color. Is it a byproduct of your other process? Is it what drives you? What role does color have in how you approach creating your artwork? I'll start with you.
Okay, so that's actually a great question. I am very drawn to neutrals, but recently, the season of my life that I'm in, I think like there's been a lot of healing work done, and there's been studies that show like when people go through trauma, like colors can be very overstimulating, and then you work through some things and you get over that hump. And for some reason, now that I've done healing and inner work in my life, I am drawn to colors now. Now I will say, like, when it comes to my photography for weddings and what I do like as a business and not just for pleasure, there are trends now out there where you see a lot of neutral photography, and like you'll scroll through an Instagram feed and it's just very neutral based. And that was hard too, because I thought that I needed to conform to that. But now when I introduced myself to film photography, I love how colors look on film. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing digital that can create what the colors look like on film. And people are now editing photos digitally to look like film photography. And I'm just gonna cut out the middleman and use film, be drawn to colors, play with colors, accept colors, because they are joyful things. And yeah, that's where it came from for me.
Do you do any post development manipulation of your analog photos?
No, I don't. You can, and I do know photographers that do. I mean, you do get them scanned and sent back to you digitally, so like that might be the only digital aspect of that process for me. For weddings, I think if needed, I would maybe brighten some, because with film it's really hard with lighting, especially if you're still working on artificial light, so like flash photography. But no, I don't like manipulate colors or anything. I let the film stock do all of the work. So
that's really cool. What about you, Emilio?
Well, for color, I find it's kind of paradoxical that like when you start limiting your color choices, or like you start sticking to a bit more of a constrained mixing path. Anything outside of that will start to just pop much more. One of my favorite ones I've noticed when I react to like natural scenes, especially at fall time, but even in the spring, I go from orange to green and just like different ratios of those two. Like the coolest green possible probably, and like the warmest orange. And I mean that gives me so many browns to even grays. Like I don't know, I'm always trying to find new mixing paths because I can never be the Zorn palette guy where it's like I use black, white, red, orange, and like it couldn't be really. I need to use like all the different colors, but letting go of some of them for an individual piece, like it starts to make things a bit more cohesive, and then anything that is outside of that will just pop that extra bit more.
There's a lot of people in this room that know we're in real trouble if you get me talking about colors. No, I have come to realize that I think, there are musicians who are just like naturally very gifted with music. They have perfect pitch, or they can take to sight reading really easily. They can just create these beautiful melodies. Music just comes very naturally to them. Like I can't carry a tune, but color is like that for me. Like it's almost like a second language, like a first language, because I can see colors before I can talk. But it's I can't explain like how I choose my color palettes, how I mix my colors. I don't really have like I don't have like a way to articulate my strategies there. It's just very natural to me. It's just I know when it's the right color, and I know and it's all the colors. I have a very hard time. I use a lot of fluorescent colors. I use a wide variety of colors, but they just work together, and I can't get enough. I'm a total maximalist when it comes to my colors. When I try to really tone it down and have a more neutral piece, it will maybe be like 50% neutral colors, and then neon orange. Like so it's just to me, I clearly get very jazzed talking about color. Like my home is a rainbow. Like it's I surround myself with colors. They just make me so happy. Like the brighter the better. But even like to me that's one thing that like will always, I think, all of my styles, even my lions that I talked about earlier, are like, if you've seen them, they're like teal or like pink. They're not lion colors. So I think with my many different styles and collections that I do, like color's definitely a unifying characteristic for me. It's like a big inspiration point for me. Get all riled up even thinking about it.
Something I'd like to ask her, because I'm always fascinated by, creativity versus process. Because I think some artists approach it really as like the work and the medium is going to tell me how to do the work, and some people think of it in really kind of like strategic, process oriented. I do this, then I do this. So do you keep color swatches in your studio?
Well, no. But I have a lot of color around me, so I don't. So when you see the pieces out there, you'll see, especially the backgrounds are a good example. It's sort of like a wide field of sort of almost a watercolor look, colored paper that's glued down. And I will make a bunch of those at one time. So I will have those around, and I consider my artwork very minimal waste. Like I'll use the smallest scraps of paper forever and ever. The more I cut it out, I save them and use them for smaller things. But so I have a lot of those papers around. So there is a cohesiveness, because I may use the same large sheet of paper, may become 20 different artworks. So I keep those around, and I generally know how I created those colors. Like I could recreate it. But again, like mixing colors comes very intuitively to me. Like if I needed to paint this color, like give me a few colors of paint in 30 seconds, and I got like it comes very naturally to me. But I don't. My husband Dan is over here, and he has his wall in his art studio. He has notebooks full of swatches. He'll swatch every ink, every marker, every paint. Like, and I don't. I like to just play and see what happens.
Do you swatch, Emilio?
I do not.
It's harder with oils.
I feel very similarly about the intuitive aspect of color mixing. I feel like as you get more experience with certain like pigments or and just how they interact with each other, like I don't know, you see more context within, especially like in between colors. My brother will accuse me of being colorblind sometimes. Just because I'll be like, there's clearly orange in that, and he's like, that is gray or something. But yeah, like I don't know, a lot of times like you come to certain very specific colors through like roundabout ways, but like as you get experience with the pigments, you know how they interact with each other, and there's a lot of like go-to bases that you go to mix with, like especially if you're making like a gray or a brown or something. If it's a specific type of gray or brown, you might make say like you mix red and green for a gray. That's one way to do it, but like you might mix purple and yellow if you have strong enough purple and yellow. Those are hard to get, but yeah, like yeah, you find multiple ways to achieve almost the same thing, but they have their own qualities based on what you use, and you come back to those based on the context of what you're working with. Yeah.
So one other difference I'd say between the three of you is that you all work in the art space in slightly different ways, and you're at different phases of your career. You know, the other work that you do to supplement maybe your art varies. You know, like Kayla does stuff within her medium to as her day job too. So I would love, especially as like a community of learners and maybe potential future professional artists, like what does your career look like as an artist? What is the mix of how you balance your art time versus maybe other things you do?
I'll go ahead and start. So I have one of those creative kids, grew up doing creative things. I studied art in college, but went away from it. And actually, I don't think I really called myself an artist until I was 40. So I'm a big advocate of like, it's never too late. You can be an artist whenever you want. The time is right. But for me, I have a job. I work 30 hours a week at a jewelry store. I also design jewelry, which is a whole nother creative endeavor. So I use my creativity everywhere. But so I really split my time between my outside of the studio work and then my studio work. I definitely consider myself a professional artist. I rely on it for income. And that looks like a lot of different things. I mean, primarily, I do work with a lot of galleries and some small shops. My primary source of income with my art is actually like art festivals and in-person events. I love it so much. Like the East Lansing Art Festival is the local one that is one of my favorites, and I do a lot of the little ones in Old Town. But just getting face-to-face with collectors and being able to see their reactions to my artwork and explain my process, and it's a real connection point for me. It's always kind of like surprises people who know me well because I'm a very extroverted person with a lot of friends and acquaintances, but I've always felt a little like, I think it's again the ADHD brain, like your brain works a little differently, and I've always felt a little bit more on the outside. Like I feel like connection is sometimes hard for me with people, and so with my art is a connection point for me. And so I think those face-to-face opportunities at festivals and things like that. I love working with galleries. I love working. I sell my artwork online. Those things are all great, but like the connection in person is like what I get the most enjoyment out of, and so I do that quite a bit. But between balancing studio time, festival time, work time, administering a business, bookkeeping, like it's a lot. But fortunately, I have an artist husband who does all the exact same things, and so he understands what I go through and puts in the same amount of work. So it's a good balance.
Yeah.
Can you share that question again?
Yeah. Well, I guess to rephrase it, what does being a professional artist look like in your career?
Yeah.
Because I think, as we're going to see, it looks really different for all of us, and I think it's really helpful to hear how people can support artists, but also how artists are doing their craft in very different ways and making a living at it in different ways.
Yeah, I am a full-time photographer. I'm privileged though because I have a very supportive husband. I'll always share that part. It is very hard. I've been in business for 7 years. I've been the only one to run my business. So that's, from doing the art, meeting people, making the connections, marketing, all of that. So I am a businesswoman too, and I love calling myself that. I do love business. The corporate world could not handle me. I actually love running my own business because I get to call the shots. I think for me too, like you, connecting with people. I think I'm more introverted than I've ever been in my life. I used to be the extrovert, but I am very vulnerable with my clients, and that allows them to be very vulnerable with me. I also offer sessions, I call them woman empowerment sessions, and it's similar to boudoir, but I take a different approach. So just that vulnerability that my clients share with me, I think is the biggest aspect of what I do and why I do it and why I'm running a successful business, because I create a space where people need to feel safe. Like there's no other option. They have to feel safe with me, whether it is, a bride, a groom, a family, a woman who's pregnant, whatever that looks like. So for me, I guess it is just the people and how I connect with them that is more lasting than the photo itself, I guess.
Well, I'm still very new to the whole art business as a full-time venture. I've just recently kind of taken that leap of faith to try and push into that. But for me, I feel like there's different modes. Like if it were up to me, 90% of the time would be the just grind work on the paintings mode. But I mean, obviously there's periods of time where I have to make sure I'm communicating with people, setting up different events like this to be able to attend and make things happen. And a lot of it also is just having good friends and people that that be willing to hear your story and understand kind of what's going on and what you're looking to make, and maybe spread the word or even support you in piece. I feel like I'm always kind of switching. I mean, I'm also teaching classes, and that's it's my second time doing it, so I still feel fairly new at it. It's my first time with painting specifically, but I don't know. It's always something new to have to tackle, for sure.
Yeah. And what a huge breadth you guys have, though, between the three of you, of how you're working as artists within ways that aren't just even making art. Yeah. Doing all those things. And I'd be curious, so Kayla, you said you didn't like social media and how that impacted your work. And I've heard other artists say they love it because it means they can directly market. So I'd love to hear how you think things like Instagram have affected your art practice.
I mean, social media is a blessing and a curse, I think, in the most cliche way to say it, because it has given me a lot of my clients who I'm friends with, or they still have returned for more photos or whatever. So I'm not knocking it entirely, but I do think we are in a new era of art. And for me and how I approach, that's one of the reasons why I'm in doing film work with photography, is because I always like to go back to the roots of art. And with social media, it has created a space where it's just this comparison game, for one. Two, it's a fast-paced thing. And I think a lot of people that I've seen in the photography community specifically, people are just taking photos to put it on the feed. And that's something that I was also into. I could categorize myself struggling in that way. And then I was just there's kids here, so this is crap. I couldn't do it anymore. It put me in therapy. That's part of the reason why I'm in therapy. Not the only reason, it's my new reason. But it didn't play a good impact on my mind. So I was okay, I'm removing myself from what's expected on social media and the internet as a whole on your phone. And I'm just gonna do things that don't involve picking up my phone at all. And it is an honor to have my artwork hanging, because people also don't have to see it on their phone. They can see it here in person. And that's my view of social media, is stay off of it. Visit art museums, visit live music venues, just like see art in person, and please buy it before we are dead.
What about for you, Amelia?
Well, for me, I feel like I have had a similar falling out with social media, where like at first you start getting numbers of say like likes or views or whatever it is depending on the platform, but then like either you'll hit a drop off or like you'll be confused as to why it's not growing, and I don't know. I had to do it more for myself rather than especially now with like the prominence of like short form video and with like specific songs or sounds are like what's the most popular thing right now, and they get so annoying. And so like, but if you're not using like this one song that everyone's using, like you're not going to be on everyone's For You page. So I don't know. I feel like it's much more fun to me when I can use it like in the most kind of like cryptic for my friends kind of way possible. But like still, if anyone, it's public, and if anyone finds it, like I hope to have a lot of fun with it. But like if I'm doing video content, like I want to use the songs that I'm listening to or that I find exciting, and aren't going to be just whatever I'm hearing 10 times a day if I scroll through for more than an hour. I feel like I also found that captioning and like saying too much, like you look back on it and you're like, oh, I hate that I said that. I just ended up saying not much, if anything, and like focusing on just like showing off what I've done and what I think is cool, and like hoping that people connect with that. It hasn't blown up, but at the same time, I think there's an integrity to it, and I think it's when people do find it, it's cool.
I think for me, my Instagram has been basically a business page for like 5 years, so I think I've been able to like remove like myself, like I don't take it personally because it's my business, you know. I realized very early on that I was not probably of the generation that was going to excel at social media or keeping current with it, and so I enjoy I enjoy the dopamine hit of posting my own artwork, like for like just getting it out there. And I know when I see people at events that like, oh, I saw you were going to be at this festival on Instagram, so like I know people see it who care and know me personally, and if I don't go viral, like it's whatever. Like I have as much fun posting, I think, as getting any reaction out of it, and I just years ago just stopped paying any attention whatsoever to like if I got 1 like or 0 likes or 100 likes. Like it's just, that's irrelevant to me. Like the little conversations that I get to have, I use it as a connection point more than anything, but like I do it much more out of my own pleasure than trying to like actually get any response, I feel like I've given up on it actually doing much for me other than just having fun throwing my stuff out there, and it's sort of an online portfolio, so if you go there you can see like this is what I'm up to. I actually get a much bigger reaction on Facebook because I think a lot of my collectors are a little bit older, a little bit more established, a little bit more in the Facebook generation, and I just love that you can do events on it, like share events and plan things, like because it's more of a community thing, I think. So I don't know. I don't pay it. I don't stress about my social media too much, but I have fun with it.
Do you find, especially since you do a lot of art shows, that you have many of your collectors who want to purchase online rather than like through the more traditional routes of like a gallery or in person from you? They want to be able to put it in their cart?
No. If the people at festivals who are like, oh, do you have a card? Is this online? Like they're taking a card and being polite and walking away and not purchasing anything online. I know the game. No, I think that most of my collectors purchase through me directly at in-person events, but also sometimes in-person events like this. So it may not be through me directly, but like someone here may purchase my artwork tonight because we had this conversation and they got to see it in person, or like other galleries. So I do sell my artwork online, but not nearly. It's a small percentage of my art sales. Yeah.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, Reach is really about creating creative community and having teaching artists work with youth or adults as teachers, but also as mentors. And I'd be curious, who do you view as your creative community, and are there mentors who've kind of been a part of your creative process and journey to becoming kind of the artist you are right now?
I'll actually start with that one too, because a lot of my creative community is here tonight. So the best thing I did the day that I decided that I was going to call myself an artist was join the Arts Council of Greater Lansing. Such a good resource, like so many opportunities, like a lot of the things that really made me feel like I was not just an imposter was opportunities that I got to do from them and just got a little bit of validation. But I'm also a member of a couple local organizations, the Mid-Michigan Art Guild and the Lansing Women's Artist Collective, of which there are several members here tonight. And they're just, it's learning from each other, giving each other feedback, finding opportunities to show work. Sometimes I'll get a commission request that is not something that is really in my wheelhouse, but might really be in somebody else's, and I'm able to hand that off to somebody who I trust. And so just having someone else who understands the artist lifestyle and process and knows you and what you do, and it's just like a consistent conversation is super, super helpful. And very early on when I first started doing festivals, like that is an undertaking. Like there is tents and displays and there's things that like you can make art, but then like pulling off a successful art festival is like a whole situation. So I had some artists very early on that were just so free flowing with advice and information and like this is the tent I have and this is a festival you should try and you should avoid this one and that, you know, like some artists can be a little gatekeeper-y, you know, and not want to share their pro tips and that, and people were so generous with their expertise to me. So I really like to give that back. Like I know, like I can share my entire process from start to finish with you guys, but not one other person in this room has like my brain and my imagination. Like you could create something similar, but it's not going to be what I create. Like I'm not community over competition, man. But so yeah, it's been really helpful having like several core groups of people that you can go to and just like they get it, and you don't have, you know, for people who don't live that, who aren't, a lot of people create art but aren't then trying to turn it into a profession or trying to sell it or trying to show it, and so that even there sometimes is a barrier. But to have a network of people who are interested in that whole process and can help you along the way is super great.
What about you, Kayla?
Yeah, my community is very eclectic. It's like a melting pot. Like I have a couple photographers. Cam Warren, he's here in Lansing. He's been really helpful with helping me understand like artificial lighting and how to work with that in a studio. But a lot of my community doesn't make up just other photographers. I think there's seasons for what your community can look like, and it's always evolving as long as we're always evolving. But mine consists of like other small business owners. Like there's someone who runs her own med spa, and she's a business owner, and I've learned from her with how to do business. There's a boutique owner in St. John's, Michigan that I'm friends with, and she's also helped me because she's a photographer too. But just like come up with like cool concepts of things to photograph. So I would say mine's very eclectic. It's not all Lansing based. It did start in Lansing. But as I continue to grow in my business, my community is like all over the world right now. I did live in South Africa for 5 months back in 2017, so that's where it started for me. So those are like my OG community when it comes to photography. Yeah.
I had a great start here specifically. I met some amazing people coming to classes here even. And I'm also a member of the Lansing Arts Council, so I found some support there, but I'm still kind of new to that formal association aspect of it. But as far as in my personal life, I feel like I can't help but find friends of all sorts of creative dispositions everywhere. I mean, I just found out the other day that my friend is giving me a writing credit on one of his songs, and like that just like blew my mind because like we were just exchanging like songwriting thoughts and tips designers, and I mean that's not my forte by any means, but like he found that interesting, something that I wrote interesting enough to incorporate it into his own work. And like I have a great friend who's living in Hawaii giving caricatures on the street like every day, like just grinding. He's always a great inspiration, and my lovely girlfriend is always in the studio with me drawing Snoopy and such. And like, yeah, I can't help but surround myself with people who are at least adjacent in some way. They have creative tendencies, and they're always even people that are on more normal career paths. A lot of people I feel like are creatives in disguise. Like they're at least thinking about it. Yeah. For sure.
And have you found anybody, Emilio, to help you with like the business end of things? I think that's coming out to be a big theme here. That
yeah, I mean, my mom as a small business operator herself, she has a lot of experience and has helped me out. Yeah, I mean, every time I have something like that I'm confused about, or like even like how should I answer this email? Yeah, that's definitely my most valuable resource for sure. I need to expand that avenue a bit, but.
well, I'd like to open it up to people who have questions for the last few minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so my art is very big and bold and polka dots and super bright colors. And I always find it interesting to ask how you measure restraint. Because for me personally, the hardest thing is putting the pen down and saying no. And so I'm curious what your relationship to restrainers or pause or that kind of thing with your various art forms. Or some things you learned maybe.
I think that, again, people who know me well know that I have very little restraint. It's a feeling, sort of, I think. You probably know that too. Like it's, I can keep adding details. Sometimes it's a time limitation. Sometimes it's good enough, but sometimes I think it is just sort of a gut feeling. I like I said, sort of maximalist. I love a lot of details, and I love to keep going. And I agree. I have that same. Sometimes it is like, when is enough? What is the minimum amount of elements I can add to this little sky to make it feel full and alive and not empty? But I usually go that one more. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear what you guys say too, because that's something that like I do also struggle with. But like when I feel it, it is just kind of like, okay, it's like a peaceful it's good.
I would say that there's like two aspects of it. There's like the practice where like limiting yourself either by like time or maybe saying like I'm gonna do work in only 3 values, just like black, white, gray. Like when you practice with that degree of limitation and you're coming back to just doing it, and you have a straightforward start and end point, and you're repeating that process, then when you're actually performing it, I feel like there's a kind of, I don't even know if I would call it an attitude, but like you can, I don't know, kind of get into doing like one big, very simple action, and I don't know, there's a certain feeling to it. Like I just did that one stroke and it was perfect.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you'll start finding a lot of excitement in simplicity, and like maybe like one big brush stroke dominates like a large part of your composition or something like that. Like doing more with less, kind of, you develop a feel for it.
The moment I have anxiety, through my website where people inquire for projects, I have my contact form set up in a way where I kind of will see if I want to have a connection with that person, and I have turned away inquiries depending on how they were written out, where I was like, this is not for me. So I think setting myself up to be in a position where I can understand right from the get-go, what I'm getting myself into, that helps me, keep restraining myself. And at the beginning, I just was wanting to get paid. So, I took on anything and everything, and I learned real quick, that is not how the human body should work. So yeah, I think like I call them pre-boundaries and then post-boundaries, and pre-boundaries are so essential as an artist. So I think it's setting myself up before, because if I'm working with someone or if I'm doing something for someone, I want to give them my best. And I have no problem telling them like, hey, this isn't a good fit. This inquiry is not gonna work out. Like today I just refunded someone money because I was like, you have a lot of expectations already, like it's not gonna work for me. So being able to do that and being confident in that has helped me restrain myself from a lot of projects that would probably turn into nightmares.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Emilio, you said you like to get something down on sort of the first pass and set it aside and then come back to it. When you come back to it, is what you've done so far kind of the new blank page that you look at? And
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will usually work with like thin down paint to start it off, and what I do get down will kind of like indicate the subject, because like I'll work like around things and try to be very deliberate about what I'm placing where, so that I get the main idea down, but it'll still be like a very blotchy, unmeasured thing, and so things will always need to be adjusted, and just by going over it with more layers that like correct, like sometimes they'll completely ignore like the previous layer, and that's how those corrections are made, is because I'm going at it just directly over that. Yeah.
My question, one kind of question-ish. So I know with Stephanie, one of the things that she's very conscious of is her medium and her tools. And one of the things that I learned in playing with her is that she does not waste paint. So when she has like extra paint in her brush, because of the nature of what she does, she will put it in, she'll just like paint on paper. So my question, Stephanie, is how did you aspire, or like, did someone teach you that, like, or was it just something like you're like, I don't want to wait, I don't want to let anything go to waste, because we know that as an artist, tools are tools, and you know, materials are expensive. So did somebody teach you that? Did you just kind of design that yourself?
I probably a combination of both. I think I've always been a relatively like eco-conscious person. That's something that I just try to strive for, is to just like not to be wasteful. And again, like art supplies are expensive, and even the last little bit on a brush is useful in some regard, but sometimes it's not enough to scrape off into the jar. So I believe that there was a couple like workshops that I took early on, probably around like 2016-ish. I took some mixed media workshops online. Like I said, I studied art in college, but like never went far enough to, like I did like basic painting, basic ceramics, basic like sort of basic level things. So really once I started playing with mixed media much later in life is when I found my current style. But so I did take some workshops, and one of the people that I worked with it was something that she did was just kind of like, if there's extra paint, she just always had a blotter paper kind of that she would make marks and stuff on, and then often those pages, once they're just covered with paint, can be torn up and ripped up and used into different things, collage materials, or even just painting on top of it. Again, I love building like the layers and the texture, like I love your juicy textures out there, like so that's harder with paper to get kind of those. But like I do some painting as well, and just painting on top of painting is fun. So if I have enough paint, I will just scoop it back into jars, and I have a jar that is like yellow-ish, red-ish, blue-ish, and then like gray. And so like whatever's on the palette, if it's more green than blue, it goes in the green jar. And then so they just become sort of these muted, earthy, grayish greens and grayish blues, and then I'll use those for a lot of things just as like base mixing colors and stuff. So if I have enough, I'll put it in the jars, but if not, I just put it on papers, and then, or if I have a large canvas, if I have a big lion started, those first layers are just colorful, abstract, that I then build my lion paintings on top of. So yeah, I'll use every little scrap of paper, and I'll not waste a drop of paint if I don't have to.
Well, we're at 8 o'clock, so I want to give everybody time to check out the artwork again and talk to the artist individually and enjoy some cookies and refreshments. I failed to mention, if you do buy artwork, let me or Sophia, who welcomed you when you came in, know, and we'll put a little red sticker next to it so everybody knows it's sold. And then the area kind of over here, we're calling it the Reach store, and most of our artists had prints or different iterations of their artwork, and those are things that can be purchased and take home this evening. So if that's something you're interested in, let me or Sophia know, and we can check you out. So thank you so much to our artists. Thank you, everyone.